Alright, so how can any of this be appetizing? Look at today's menu. Fish with eggs and honey? Weird. How about meat with shrimp doused in seed oil? The flavors are all over the place. Okay, how about vegetables with whole garlic and fish roe? What could this possibly taste like? Hello everyone, and welcome to a new serving of Crystal Crown, the show that answers questions you never thought you had. Something I never knew how much I was going to enjoy is Monster Hunter Wilds. My friends and I have been basically playing it non-stop the past couple weeks, and I just managed to beat high rank. While I can rant and rave about the different monster designs or how intriguing the world is, today is focused on what feels like the strangest detail in the game. And I'm not talking about the bipedal cats. It is the downright bonkers level of detail that's been put into the food. From the very first feast cutscene, I've been interested in the meals the hunters have been chowing down on. I mean, come on, look at that cheese. I'd certainly go toe-to-toe with a hulking beast if it meant I could get a bite of that. Pretty early into the game, you gain access to your own tent and the ability to create custom meals. And as you progress through the game, you gain a more diverse list of ingredients, all with different buffs to temporarily increase your stats and take the fight on with the behemoths you battle in-game. You choose a main, an additional ingredient, and a finishing touch to create the perfect meal, and on several occasions, I've had to walk away from my keyboard to do a bit of foraging in my kitchen after seeing the hunter enjoy what looks like a Michelin-level dish. And between these cravings, the food got me thinking. If you were to try every combination of main, side, and finishing touch offered by Monster Hunter in real life, which option from the bunch would come out as the most delicious? But before we answer that, Emma is actually missing one last item to create a sick new weapon for you. All you gotta do is click subscribe. Great, thanks. Now, like any good hunt, it's best for me to prepare for what I'm getting myself into when I say every single combination. If you have the full list of ingredients currently in the launch version of the game, it comes out to be 3 mains, 5 additional ingredients, and 6 finishing touches. This comes out to be a gargantuan 90 total combinations I need to make. So if I learned anything from my time grinding this game, it's useful to call in some friends for a difficult challenge. I had my buddy Will join me in cooking up all of the different ingredients and subsequently taste test them. We decided to rank them 1 being a Congalala fart of a dish, while 10 being like Ray Dow's design.
I bought entirely too much meat, I'm realizing, for what we're trying to do, so this will be dinner for a couple of weeks.
But let's talk about ingredients. For our 3 mains, the game offers these options. For meat, I wanted to get the closest thing I could to what's shown in-game. Poking around online, people believe that the marbling closely resembles pork over other red meats like beef. While something like pork belly would be the most preferred option, my local store has these massive pork loins that would work great for what I'm going for. Our next option is fish. Looking in-game, it seems like they specifically want a white fish. I ended up going with tilapia, as these long fillets would be way easier to cut into neatly organized portions for our different combinations than some of the smaller fish varieties. Finally, our veg option is a frankly obnoxiously sized wedge of cabbage. Like a pizzeria's interpretation of a salad, wedge of cabbage. Anyway, I grabbed a fresh head to cover our greens quota. Going into our additional ingredient category, we're working with 5 choices. Being garlic, I went for minced for easy plating, mushroom, eggs, cheese, specifically mozzarella as the gooey balls felt closest to what we see in the feast screen, and finally some pre-cooked shrimp to cut down on cook time. Rounding out our unholy feast is our finishing touches, of which there are 6. To start, the herb we chose was fresh basil, honey. Now, monster chili actually threw me because I was torn between which direction to take. In-game, the animation heavily reminds me of red pepper flakes, but the idea that it's chili made from monsters made me think I wanted something with a little bit more kick. In the end, I ended up getting both chili flakes as well as lao gan ma, depending on what we were feeling was more appropriate for the dish. Following that, for wild seed oil, I narrowed down my options to eventually just sesame or peanut oil. And since I wanted just like a little dab on each one, I thought that toasted sesame oil would be the perfect choice. Now, our last 2 ingredients are probably our most expensive on the list. We started with jeweled mullet roe. When you think of roe, you're probably imagining those little orange balls, right? Well, take a look at how it's shown in game. It's way more of like a flake or a dusting. After reading a bit online, most people actually came to the conclusion that it's actually a Mediterranean delicacy known as bortarga. Basically, it's a block of dried fish roe that's been salted, hardened, and pressed down until it's basically this hard-tack fish roe. Also known as poor man's caviar, I am super curious to try this out. And finally, we have truffles. Honestly, the only thing I know about this bougie mushroom is that it was the ingredient added to all the Worth It episodes that jacked up the price. So I really hope it lives up to the hype. Now that we got our items, it's time to get cooking. Following the strategy used by our hunter chefs, we started by grabbing a slab of butter to grease our hot pans. Searing our meats was a top priority, since this would take the longest to cook. After getting a good color on our portions, we then transitioned it to the oven for a reverse sear. While this does stray away from what the hunter does, this was mostly done so that we could simultaneously work on the fish, which only needs a good stovetop sear to get started. While those two cook, I prepped our vegetables, taking the layers and cutting them into more edible bites. Once ready, these were also tossed onto the stovetop and given a quick roast. With all of our mains set up, we created an assembly line to make our bites the most efficient. Since some of the additional items also needed time to be cooked, namely sauteing the mushrooms or frying the egg, we made sure to alternate these bites with other non-cooked ingredients so that we could prep them while we taste test our other creations. Here's how it went down. We would slice our mains into edible bites, then apply one of the additional ingredients to each portion. Finally, we would go down the line, providing one of each finishing touch before giving our judgments. Basically, this meant that we had a garlic category, a mushroom category, cheese, egg, then shrimp. Now, let me save you from basically 2 hours of... Here's a faster summary. First, we started strong with the garlic category. While minced garlic has a really strong bite to it, overall the combos resulted in pretty average across the board numbers, with an equal amount of high and low combos. The highest here turned out to be meat, garlic and herb, or meat, garlic and honey.
It feels like a marinade I would already eat.
Yeah, honey garlic ham. Yeah, you could pitch that to me.
With the lowest being vegetable garlic and sesame oil.
More sesame on this one.
Yeah. Oh no, I definitely feel sesame that time.
I also wanted to take a second to review our specialty fish roe here because it's the most out there ingredient we have. Honestly, throughout the video, I really started to dig the taste. It brought this sort of briny, salty element without any of the noticeable fish taste or smell, to the point that the cabbage roe garlic dish turned out to be one of the top 5 best bites in the garlic category.
It's really well.
Yeah, I don't taste fish though.
Looking at mushrooms, I have to come clean with my own bias. I personally have never loved the taste of mushrooms. Maybe that's why I love hunting Zoo-hoo so much. Naturally, I say this colored my perception of the category.
I'm not a fan at all.
With lower scores across the board, but there certainly were standouts. Specifically the meat mushroom truffle section, with its not one, but 2 different kinds of mushrooms, managed to meld its flavors together really well.
If you like mushroom 1, you will love mushroom 2.
On the other side, turns out that cabbage mushroom and honey, or cabbage mushroom and truffles, wildly different flavors, had the exact opposite reaction.
Oh, horrible mouth texture.
Yeah, not great.
Next, we move on to eggs, which is a group favorite. Specifically, the vegetable section saw way higher scores across the board, as it felt like a bunch of little mini breakfast wraps. Just enough energy for the day for you to go spinning down that dragon spine.
I actually like that one better than the meat one.
On the other hand, this was one of the weakest categories for fish,
It's just nothing.
who had some winners like egg and honey, but just as many misses, like the worst roe variant tried so far.
Chalk. I'm just eating a handful of chalk. It's just so dry.
It's very dry.
The party continues with cheese. The mozzarella's naturally subdued taste meant that it melded exceptionally well across the 3 different categories. Obviously, meat and cheese is a surefire combo, but we found that veg, cheese, and roe to be a delightful surprise, and fish, cheese, and honey to get a tentative thumbs up. The only blight on the mozz's resume is its run-in with fish and sesame oil.
Oh, one. God, no.
Our last category is shrimp. I had to make an emergency change.
Will, unfortunately, has carded. So we have wheel number 2 here.
My sous chef passed the torch, and we had our other friend take on the mantle for our last 18 bites. While not experiencing the super highs we saw with the last 2, shrimp's pretty simple texture led to middling scores across the board, with meat, shrimp, and roe offering a nice surf and turf feel, while fish, shrimp, and sesame getting one of the best scores within the sesame category.
I think this is the first time sesame has saved a meal.
Now, with the votes tallied and each individual item ranked, I'm happy to report my ultimate findings. I will state that these rankings are entirely just the opinions of me and my friends cooking a vast array of dishes for several hours, with our opinions probably being affected by things like which item we ate first, how many times we ate that item in a single go, and the personal tastes of our 2 judges. Which I mean to say, this is the objective truth and should be taken as food gospel. Capcom, I'm expecting you to buff all the dishes that I like and either remove or completely debuff the ones I don't. Anyway, let's start with our mains. We found that meat scored the best, with an average score of 6 across its 30 mini bites. This was then followed by veg with an average of 4.5, and our worst being fish, which scored only slightly lower with a flat 4. With meat, we found that the strong taste of pork had a tendency to meld better with all the different competing flavors, where the cabbage and tilapia's lighter flavors allowed all of these different combos to battle it out more between each bite. For the additional ingredients category, this turned out to be an exceptionally close call, with all of the ingredients falling within a 1.5 point average variant. At the bottom, we find mushroom. Again, I'm chalking this up to my own personal preference. This then moves up to shrimp, garlic, and cheese. These placements also don't super surprise me. With shrimp suffering as the final taste test of the night, that might have pulled it down. Garlic's rank makes sense. The scores were kind of all over the place, being such an intense hit of flavor right out the gate. And cheese's naturally simple flavors, melding to create some truly harmonious bites. Our best ingredient turned out to be eggs. The egg's mild savory flavor meant that it wasn't so volatile when paired with less agreeable flavors, while also offering a nice overall taste itself. Which, considering how prices are going, may end up being more rare than truffles or roe soon enough. Speaking of which, let's talk about finishing touches. It's here I think we need to address probably the worst ingredient in my opinion across the entire grocery list. That being toasted sesame oil. Now, truthfully, I still don't know why this was so wrong. I mean, I've had sesame oil dips before at restaurants and cooked with sesame oil several times with different meal preps. It's incredible. But for this experiment, just those couple of dots of oil on each one resulted in a wholly unpleasant experience. Maybe it was that the portion size was too small to offset the intensity of the oil, or that the toasted sesame oil should have been replaced with the regular. All I know is that it was ranked worst across the board with a rough 3.35 average score. The rest of the finishing touches all hung around the 4 to 5 category, with chili being next, followed up by truffle, roe, herb, and finally honey only slightly eking out a victory. The added sweetness was found to be a welcome relief, especially when battling all the different flavor profiles we ended up trying. Now the question I raise is this: if we know the best and worst individual ingredients, did their final combinations end up being the highest and lowest ranked dish when all paired together? The answer, surprisingly, was no. The best dish from averages, meat, egg, and honey, ranked a score of 7.5. I mean, respectable. But only ranked 9th best when compared to the other individual bites. Our best ranked option turned out to be meat, garlic, and honey, one of the only bites to receive a coveted 10, resulting in a 9.25. In this case, it seemed that the added kick from the garlic managed to accentuate the good flavors better than the data-driven choice of going with sweetness. For the worst option, fish, mushroom, and sesame, this got a 3, which makes sense considering. However, there turned out to be a lot of worse individual choices. While our best was at least in the top 10, our worst ended up only being the 18th worst bite of the night. Scrolling all the way to the bottom, the real stinker was fish, cheese, and sesame oil. This unholy combo of all over the place flavors immediately secured the only flat 1 scored the entire time. It's super interesting to me that while we can get a feel for what seems like the best choices from data, certain combinations accentuate flavors in ways that would cause them to like or dislike dishes even more than they would typically. So there you have it, the full breakdown of Monster Hunter meals. Do you have one that you think would be your fave? We'd love to hear it in the comments. Around me, you can find Crystal Crown videos that you're sure to enjoy. And if you excuse me, I want to grab one of these Rathian eggs and try to make the world's best omelet. See ya!